Hi everyone. Predicting the future is really hard. Humans make decisions that change our collective future from day to day. But often, this really just means making things up. In 1943, then IBM CEO Thomas Watson said, "I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers." In 1981, Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, was reported to have said that 640 kilobytes of memory is more than anyone will ever need. Boy, did they get it wrong. However, thinking beyond the future is a little easier. It involves looking at the core of what makes us human and observing how we create our future every day, through our values and our virtues. I think that it is important to talk about how our values and virtues will impact the future, as well as how our values and virtues have been shown in the past. An example of how our modern-day values and virtues were shaped by our past is the Roman Empire. The Romans valued war and conquest and came to rule Europe through their precisely planned military campaigns and ruthless rule. But when they felt threatened by others in their homeland, a civil war quickly began. This led to a weakening of their defences, and then the Visigoths raided and took over Rome. Their virtue of war eventually led to their own downfall. There is a lot to be learned from the past, and lots of considerations to be made when creating our future. Humans are changing the definition of life as we develop groundbreaking technology, such as artificial intelligence. Not all groundbreaking technology being developed is in the field of AI, but for the point of this talk, I'll be focusing on that. Navigating these new challenges can be difficult and confusing, but I think that our future is made certain by what is different and human at our core. And it is for this reason that we should not worry too much about the future. I predict that as we develop groundbreaking technology, such as artificial intelligence, our values will adapt and help us find balance. I predict that at difficult times, our values will shine through and show us the way forward. I predict we'll make others happy, in turn making ourselves happy. And I predict we will create culture and keep striving to preserve it. But before I get any further into these ideas, I'd like to help you understand why I am looking at the past, when the theme of these TEDx talks is thinking beyond the future. I look to the past because being human means having the capacity to reflect and learn, and this provides the foundation for our thoughts. Humans are different from other life forms for the reason that we have values and virtues. They set us apart, let us make the right decisions, and they are our light and darkness. When we can see many similarities between the past and the present, I think that what has happened in the past will give us clues to what will happen into and beyond the future. Without these values and virtues, Homo sapiens would be merely just another primate. Different cultural and political views bring different balances of values. Of course, the balance of values also changes across cultures and over time. Economic, social, religious, and institutional factors also influence the balance of values. So, let me go through some of the values I think are at the core of our humanity. The preservation of ideas is a really important virtue, because we want to preserve past lives and artifacts to develop our culture over time. A modern example of this virtue is museums, where we preserve past lives, ideas, and artifacts to show the continuity of our culture and ideas. Communication is a key to preserving ideas, and through complex communication, language can be passed on, even when the language is no longer spoken. An example of this complex communication is the Rosetta Stone. It was used to pass on the language of Egyptian hieroglyphics through knowledge of ancient Greek. Nowadays, we have machines that help us learn and translate, such as Google Translate, which helps us to communicate without difficulty. One of the earliest known transmissions of cultural ideas is the Indigenous rock art in Australia, which has been dated back to more than 30,000 years ago. The rock art shows how even before ancient peoples knew anything of other civilizations, there was a human desire to communicate and preserve ideas. There are many examples throughout time of this desire to preserve culture. The cave paintings in southern Europe, the marble carvings on the Parthenon, and the stories on the panels of Angkor Wat. The ancient Egyptians believed that by preserving their leaders, they were preserving their culture and ideals. This is also practiced in modern cultures. For example, Lenin's body is preserved for public display in his tomb in Moscow. Ho Chi Minh's body is on display in Hanoi. And in Italian culture, the mummified bodies of nuns and priests are often displayed in churches and cathedrals. Currently, there are many other ways humans are working to preserve culture. Aside from having UNESCO World Heritage Sites to preserve historic places, we also store an increasing amount of our cultural stories digitally. We are now producing so many cultural artifacts and so much information that it will be hard to preserve it all. And we are talking about truly stupendous volumes of data. Every minute, YouTube's video archive incorporates around 400 hours of video. The Internet Archive currently holds around 333 billion web pages. Only some of this content will be preserved in the long term, but clearly we are placing a value on it. Some human values are shared across cultures, but shown in different ways. Happiness is an intriguing value, because not only do we pursue happiness, but we also wish to make others happy. What is happiness? Throughout time and across cultures, happiness has been defined in various ways. In the practice of Christianity, happiness is often referred to as blessedness. Most often, happiness is referred to as pleasure. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is mentioned in both the American and Vietnamese Declarations of Independence. The phrase, gross national happiness, was first coined in 1972 by the fourth King of Bhutan, when he declared, "Gross national happiness is more important than gross domestic product." Almost all cultures agree that the search for happiness is intrinsic to human life. Conversely, respect is of value, where you can really see the distinction between cultures. In many Western cultures, respect can be earned by anyone at any age, based on their achievements. In many Asian cultures, elders, and those of a higher social status, are more highly regarded, without concern for the achievements of others. There are certainly exceptions to both of these forms of respect, but generally speaking, this statement is true. Despite these differences, all cultures value respect in some form. We have barely begun to think about our developing technologies, about whether we respect Siri and Alexa, and whether they respect us. Some values, such as peace and having your opinion heard must be balanced. Peace gives us time and space to live our best lives. Similarly, loyalty and compassion are values that are sometimes regarded in opposition to each other. The Inglehart-Welzel culture map shows how different cultures embrace different values. You can see that Northern Europe values compassion and self-expression over loyalty, while Confucian cultures value loyalty over compassion. One of the most pressing ethical questions facing modern technology is the role of AI. I am going to make a controversial statement. I think that anything we create will share our values, because although we may not acknowledge it, we input our values from day-to-day life, and the programmers creating AI will bring their values into their work. What would be the point of AI that did not express our human values? However, should we make decisions about values we should prioritize? Advanced AI, like our consciousness, will develop its own values over time, as it learns and is trained from our behavior and history. Whatever these values are, it is important that AI also values what we value. The equilibrium between these values can lead to ethical questions when technologies have power over life and death. If we created AI that did not value human life and gave it too much control, would it want to kill all humans? A classic ethical question often discussed around AI is the famous trolley problem. How do you decide which track to send a vehicle along? Do you kill one person or many? How would a self-driving car make the decision, and should it even be forced to make this decision? We need to bring our human values to these kinds of ethical problems, while also recognizing that sometimes even our human balancing of these values is impossible. Sometimes even the best of us don't have simple solutions to ethical problems we are asking AI to solve. Artificial intelligence and technology as a whole are developing at an astounding rate. But I think this is an advantage, not a problem. No matter what decisions humanity is faced with into and beyond the future, I'm confident that our continuing values will help us to make the right decisions for the human race. I'm optimistic that although there will be stops and starts, our values and virtues will guide us. We don't need to worry too much about the future, as unpredictable as it may be, because I'm certain that the future will be much like the past, as our values and virtues will help to define it. Thank you.